So today's video is going to be a kind of mini true crime video. Actually, if you look at the length of this video, I don't really think it's that mini, but compared to my other ones that I do, this one is relatively short. And that's just because this case in particular doesn't have as much media coverage as some of the other cases that I covered, and that is one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this. So if you guys enjoy these kind of smaller videos in and amongst my kind of longer ones, it'll allow me to put more content out for you. So just let me know if you enjoy shorter ones mixed in with the longer ones so that we can get these out more often. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about the case of Jimmy Mizen. And yeah, like I said, this is a relatively short case. There's no kind of documentaries on it. There's no, I don't know, I just really felt strongly about covering this case. Jimmy's family have done so much in the way of kind of keeping his name alive and keeping his story out there and using it to kind of help other people and help other young people. And so that is, again, one of the reasons that I wanted to cover this, because it has such a good message behind it. Like, even though it's such a terrible story, some really good things came out of it, and I'm sure that Jimmy would be really proud of what his family have done. One of Jimmy's parents was even quoted saying, "The day Jimmy died, I promised him two things. One, that I would keep his name alive, and two, that I would dedicate my life to working for peace." But I'll get more into the kind of family's work and the things that they've done towards the end of the video. I am just going to jump straight into this case because I feel like this has been a very long intro. So Jimmy John Mizen was born on May the 9th, 1992 in Lewisham in London in England.
He was born on a Saturday, and it was May the 9th, 1992, cup final day. And that's why I think I remember it the most, because my dad phoned me up at 12 o'clock on this day, and he, "Have you had the baby yet?" "No, Dad, not yet." And by 2:30, Barry was phoning up all our family to say that we'd had this beautiful baby boy, £10.4, the biggest of all our children. And my husband got home in time for the second half of the cup final, which I've never let him forget.
He was born into a big family. He was one of 9 children, I think, the 6th of 7 boys to Barry and Margaret Mizen. This is another quote from his parents. "Jimmy was an unusually good baby and grew quickly into a lovely little boy. He was always smiling, he had a beautiful smile. There was an innocence and a boldness about him and an uncomplicated love of life."
Jimmy was just such an easy boy, or an easy baby. Never difficult, didn't mind going to bed, gurgled and was just lovely. At 4 months, Jimmy got meningitis and nearly lost his life, but he managed to pull through that. As a toddler, he was just the sweetest boy, always smiling, always happy.
Jimmy was quite a popular boy, popular in the way that everyone knew him and everyone liked him. Not like, you know, like hierarchy, popular type thing. But he was just so loved by everyone that ever met him. All the kids in school knew him. They all knew him as the happy, kind of positive, friendly person.
For everyone that doesn't know him, you'll never ever be able to replace him. He's an amazing person and he's just got the biggest, friendliest heart.
He was just kind to anyone. Everyone walked down the street here, getting off the train in the morning, and people would go, "You alright, Jimmy? What's happening, mate? You alright?" And everyone knew him, just people that walked past him, so I think that's what everyone loved about him.
Jimmy would often stand up for other kids that were being bullied in the school because the bullies liked him, the kids liked him. Like, he was just a really kind person. He didn't ever want to see anyone sad. He was, like his parents said, always smiling. Jimmy was also very tall. He was 6'4", and for 16 years old, that is really tall. He was one of the tallest boys in his school, and that earned him the nickname of the BFG, or Big Friendly Giant. He was really close with all his siblings, especially his brothers. Like I said, there was a lot of boys in this family, a lot of kids in general, so they were all pretty like close. They were like best mates.
I'll tell you one story about him. We've got a Wii in our garage and the boys all played it, but they play at night, so whoever lost had to make the cups of tea. Every night Jimmy went and made the cups of tea. But that was Jimmy, you know, they'd just tell him to, "Tea, Jimmy." It's just lovely. He's just lovely. He was kind. Do you know, in the 16 years and one day I've had him, I've never once told him off. not once.
Jimmy used to work for his dad on Saturdays. I think most of the Mizen children did, because his dad owned like a shoe repairing shop in the town, and so the kids would all help out and work on Saturdays and things.
Jimmy used to work with me on Saturdays. I'm a shoe mender. He used to help me in my shoe mender's shop, and we had a great relationship. We'd drive off together in my van down to the shop, and we'd whistle the sailor's hornpipe, and we'd just start laughing and giggling. Lots of little jokes. He was my mate.
Jimmy and his family were also devout Roman Catholics, and they would all attend church every Sunday together. Until the age of 14, Jimmy had actually been one of the altar boys at his church, and he was really proud of his faith. He was really happy to be a Roman Catholic.
And we'd be sitting in church, and next thing there's Jimmy walking past us going up to receive communion. Big smile on his face. Jimmy used to come and sit down, and we discuss our readings. Jimmy was proud of his faith. Jimmy was proud of his faith, and perhaps we could urge anybody watching this film, be proud of your faith.
He would also mow the lawn for his 87-year-old neighbour who couldn't do it herself, and he would tend her garden for her. He would do the weekly shopping for the disabled women at his church. He was just always doing something nice for other people. He was such a selfless person, such a kind of loving and kind person.
I have a stock of little jokes that I tell, and my sons will say, "Dad, you've told us before, yeah, we know that joke." Jimmy, I could tell him time and time again, he'd always laugh.
So I'm going to start with a little bit of background on the people that Jimmy was with on the day of his murder, specifically his brother Harry. In 2001, 7 years before Jimmy's murder, his older brother Harry, who was just 10 years old at the time, was mugged by a 13-year-old boy named Jake Farry. Harry handed over the only money that he had on him. Being a 10-year-old, this was only 20p, a 20p coin. And Jake Farry wasn't happy with that, and so he punched him in the stomach. So Harry went straight home, he told his mum and dad, and they got in contact with Jake Farry's school, and he was subsequently punished. Then 2 years later, in 2003, Jake and Harry met again, this time when Jake was 15 and Harry was 13, and Jake confronted Harry again. Jake demanded to know why Harry had grassed on him all the way back in 2001, 2 years earlier, and if you don't know what grassed means, I think that's like a UK term. It basically means like telling on someone, getting someone into trouble for something they've done. Harry tried to get away from Jake, but before he could, Jake grabbed hold of Harry's shirt, threatened to beat him up, and then punched him in the chest again. And this time the Mizen family got in contact with the police because this could not keep continuing. Jake couldn't keep coming up to Harry in the street and just confronting him. And so the police thought this too. They thought it had gone too far, and so they went to Jake Farry's house and gave him a harassment warning. On the 9th of May 2008, it was Jimmy Mizen's 16th birthday, and so he went out with friends to celebrate.
My last connection with Jimmy was cuddling in this kitchen on the day of his birthday before he went out from friends. It was the last time I saw him. But that is such a great memory.
The following morning, Jimmy woke up bright and early, which was a surprise to his family because he was a teenager. He used to sleep in on weekends. This was a Saturday morning, especially after he'd been out partying. He'd normally sleep in until like the afternoon. But Jimmy had just turned 16 and he was really excited to go out and buy his first scratch card. When you're 16, you can legally buy a scratch card in England, which is like a little lottery ticket. And so he really wanted to go out and buy one that morning.
So they got up and went round the corner with a brother to a cafe to have some breakfast, then came home, and he was all excited because he was 16 and he wanted to do the lottery, and so he was asking me how to do it, and we were having such a laugh because I didn't really know. But anyway, we worked it out. You could do a lucky dip, and then he decided to go around the corner and get his lottery ticket with another brother.
At around 11:30 on the 10th of May 2008, Jimmy and his older brother Harry went to buy his first scratch card, and then they went to the local bakery. So they entered the Three Cooks bakery. They were there for a few minutes until a now 19-year-old Jake Farry enters the bakery, the same boy that had been terrorising Harry all these years. Jake stepped towards Jimmy Mizen, who just didn't acknowledge him at all. And so Jake looked at him to say that he was trying to get past. Those are his words. He never actually said anything to Jimmy. He never said, "Excuse me," or "I'm trying to get past." He just looked at him as if to say that. But still, he got no reaction from Jimmy because this was just a look. If he'd have said excuse me, I'm sure that Jimmy would have moved out of the way. He wasn't a mean person. He wasn't just going to stand in the way for no reason. But Jake took this the wrong way. He didn't get a reaction twice, and so he barged straight past Jimmy, knocking him over a little bit. And so Jimmy turned to Jake and he said, either one of two things. I found like a couple of different sources that said different things, so I don't know exactly what Jimmy said to him. Some of the sources say that Jimmy said to Jake, "Don't touch me." Some of them say that he said some manners wouldn't go amiss. Jake began shouting at Jimmy and Harry. He was threatening them, harassing them, and that was when Jimmy decided to stand up and defend the two of them. He wasn't gonna let someone stand there and threaten him and his brother. Jake told Jimmy to step outside the shop so that they could fight, but Jimmy turned it down. He refused to go out and fight with him because Jimmy wasn't looking for trouble. He was just trying to defend him and his brother. It was Jake that started all this. Jimmy didn't actually want to fight this boy. And besides, Jake was like 5'7" and Jimmy was like 6'4". That's almost a whole foot in height difference. So it's not even the fact that Jimmy thought he would lose, it was genuinely the fact that Jimmy was just too nice and he didn't want to start trouble, because he probably could have won anyway. He wasn't the confrontational type. So anyway, Jake Farry stepped out of the shop for a while, but he didn't like walk away, he just stepped outside of the shop. And so Jimmy's older brother Harry called their older brother Tommy, who was 27, to come down to the bakery and get them. And Jake Farry looked through the window of the bakery and saw Harry on the phone to someone and thought he was grassing on him again. So he came straight back into the bakery and threw 2 plastic drinks at the Mizen brothers. So now obviously Jake had turned this argument physical, something that Jimmy never wanted to do. But since Jake started it, he wasn't just going to stand there and let him throw things at him. So Jimmy and Harry got up and started to fight Jake. This fight led to them falling into, and I think breaking, a glass cake stand. And that was when Jake Farry was escorted out of the shop. A few minutes later, Jake Farry came back into the shop for a third time, and this time he had a metal sign in his hand. Jake approached Jimmy and Harry with this metal sign in his hand, and he began to just poke Jimmy with it and just kind of annoy him. It was clear at this point that Jake's attentions had moved more to Jimmy rather than Harry. At first he was mad at Harry for grassing on him all those years ago, but now it was more Jimmy that was fighting Jake back rather than Harry, and Jake just wanted attention. That was this whole thing. He just wanted a rise out of one of them. And he was getting that from Jimmy, and so he started to focus on Jimmy a little bit more. And so Jimmy, to try and get Jake to stop poking him with this metal sign, he just kind of grabbed hold of it. He didn't try and pull it off him or anything, he just grabbed it. And because he was so much stronger than Jake, it did start to come out of Jake's hands a little bit, and he panicked. Jake said in police interviews, "I could feel it coming out of my hands, so I panicked. I looked to my left, there was a tray there. I picked it up and I threw it." So Jake looked to his side, he saw this hot glass tray on the side. He picked it up and threw it straight at Jimmy, and it actually hit him straight in the face, right in the chin, and it just shattered immediately. One of these shattered pieces of glass was actually over an inch long, and it actually caught Jimmy's neck, severing his carotid artery and his jugular vein, and he immediately just started bleeding so much. It was when Jake saw how much Jimmy was bleeding that he decided to just leave the bakery with what witnesses describe as a triumphant grin on his face. Jimmy staggered towards the back of the bakery and locked himself in a cupboard just in case Jake decided to come back for a 4th time and do anything else. And it was there when the older brother Tommy, the 27-year-old brother that Harry called in, came to this cupboard and found Jimmy there. Jimmy collapsed into Tommy's arms, and Tommy was trying so hard to try and stop the bleeding on his neck, but there was just so much bleeding.
I suppose I'd like to have had him in my arms, but I'm comforted by the fact he was in my son's arms. My son wouldn't let me go near him. He just said, "Mum, he's okay, just wait." Of course I'd like to have been there with him, and he's my baby and I want to hold him. But his brother loves him as much as I do.
An ambulance was obviously called, but within 3 minutes of the attack starting, Jimmy had died. And so it happened so quick that there was nothing a paramedic could have done in that situation. Jake Farry didn't actually know that he'd killed Jimmy until the next day when his mum told him. and so 3 days after the actual murder, he decided to turn himself into police. He couldn't live with himself. In March of 2009, Jake's trial began, and he admitted to throwing the glass, but he did not admit to murder. His intention was probably to get like a manslaughter plea with that. However, he went to that bakery and started that fight himself repeatedly. Jimmy told him to just leave it, but he came back 3 times to that bakery to try and start a fight with them, and so the jury just wasn't having any of this manslaughter plea. Ultimately, Jake Farry was found guilty of the murder of Jimmy Mizen, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 14 years. But this actually wasn't the first time that Jake Farry had been in trouble with the police. In 2004, he took part in a gang robbery, holding a schoolboy at knife point. Just a month before that, when he was 16 years old, he robbed another person in Greenwich Park. In 2006, he was given an 18-month supervision order for the rape of a 13-year-old girl, something that he could have actually been imprisoned for. However, this girl was only 13, and the trauma of having to relive this in court and going to court with all her evidence was just too much for her, and so she decided to withdraw her evidence. However, if she had have done that, maybe Jimmy would have never been killed, because maybe Jake would have already been in prison. Obviously, she wasn't to know that this was going to go on. I'm not trying to say that that was her fault in any way. I'm just saying that it's so unfortunate that he didn't go to prison for such a horrible thing, because then a life would have been saved. So like I said, Jimmy's family have done so much since his murder. They've done so much to keep his name alive, keep his story out there, and hopefully help other kids that might go down a similar path to Jake or to Jimmy. In 2009, the Mizen family opened up a charity in Jimmy's name called the Jimmy Mizen Foundation, which was later renamed as For Jimmy. Obviously, I'll link all the websites down below. For Jimmy actually has its own website where you can even donate. You can read about some of the things that his family do, because I'm not going to go through every single little detail in this video, but you can read up on what they do. You can even donate to that charity. As part of this charity, Barry and Margaret Mizen, Jimmy's parents, travel around the whole of the UK and even further. They've even been to Kenya, just giving talks about Jimmy's story, Jimmy's life, and just trying to educate children on how they can make their communities safer. Jimmy's family have opened a total of 4 cafes, all in Jimmy's name and all for the For Jimmy charity. But yeah, like I said, I'll link everything down below that you might need to look into that charity a little bit more. So like I said, Jimmy was such a loving and kind-hearted and just giving person, and whenever he was in town and he saw a homeless person, he would give them a little bit of money or a little bit of food. And one of these homeless men, when he heard about Jimmy's passing, he actually went to Jimmy's memorial and laid out his rug for him. The Mizen family were named one of Britain's most influential Roman Catholic families in 2010 by The Tablet, and in 2014 Barry and Margaret Mizen, Jimmy's parents, were appointed MBE for their services to young people after their son's death. But yeah, that is everything on this case. Let me know what you thought about these shorter videos, because it's sometimes cases like these that I really want to cover, because especially this one, because of everything that the family have done to try and get his name out there, I thought that, I don't know, making a video might help with that. And it's often the shorter cases where there's not all that much information out there that I feel the most strongly about, that I want to get out there most. At the end of the day, all these people, all these victims deserve to have their story told equally. Just because someone's case has more information out there doesn't mean that they deserve to have their story told than people like this that only have a short case. Obviously there's so much more information to this, it's just not public. They just haven't done documentaries and things on this case, so this is everything that I could find. But let me know if you would enjoy these kind of shorter videos sprinkled among my longer ones. It'd mean that I could get content out a lot quicker, because these videos do take a lot to research, a long time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a big thumbs up down below and subscribe if you want to see some more from me, because I upload true crime videos and makeup videos. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of shorter cases down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!